Greetings, everyone. Last night I was kept up by caffeine and a mind that wouldn't turn off. I had been watching some videos of some different people who had given commentary or news reporting. I don't know if it was news or rumor or whatever, just about different things that were happening in the Star Wars franchise, about Kathleen Kennedy, or I had heard about Kelly Marie Tran and what had happened with her Twitter account and things like that, and all the disappointing things about Solo, reasons why it didn't perform, and things like that. So I was thinking about all these different things, and I thought, and I have no idea how long this is going to be. I mean, you'll know because you'll see a time thing on it before you click it or whatever. Um, but it felt like I was going on for like 1 or 2 hours in my head just thinking up of all these things. So I tend to be a bit long-winded on things when I'm interested in it or when I'm passionate about it. So I have a I have an outline of stuff to keep myself in control here, to keep myself focused, so that way I don't go off the rails too much. Hopefully this won't take forever, but we'll just see what happens. If you're interested, great. If not, oh well. I guess the great thing about sharing our thoughts like this is that, I guess according to the First Amendment, you don't have to, whatever I say, you don't have to agree with it. You don't have to like it. You don't have to listen to it. I can say my thoughts, and that's just how it is. Or you can agree with me, and that's fine. We have the freedom to say what we want, as long as we don't say something like fire in a crowded building, causing trouble deliberately. That's kind of frowned upon, I think, in most civilized societies. Okay, so I have like 5 main points. The fourth one is really, really huge. That's the one that took up the most time. So, all right. So first thought, about just these are just my honest opinions about how I feel regarding the Star Wars franchise, and about the movies that have come about since the Disney acquisition. So these are just my honest thoughts. My honest thoughts. That's all that they are. All right. So first, when Disney bought Lucasfilm, I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking on this one though. When Disney bought Lucasfilm, I had mixed feelings at first. I had a bad feeling about it, not partly because I think of the expanded universe was made non-canon anymore, just sort of legends, if you will. And there were some neat things that I thought happened in there. So we weren't going to get. I mean, I didn't think we really were, but there was no chance of going to be an Heir to the Empire trilogy, Heir to the Empire, Dark Force Rising, Last Command. That wasn't going to happen. Mara Jade was gone. Sorry, Grand Admiral Thrawn was gone, only for a little bit, we found out. Um, but the Clone Wars TV show that got canceled and it wasn't finished yet, and I heard that there was supposed to be a showdown between what was it, Cad Bane and Boba Fett, and and in that shootout, that's where Boba Fett was supposed to get the dent in his helmet. Was the shootout between that, and then that's where Cad Bane was supposed to die. But they, stories that didn't get told in the Clone Wars TV series got put into comic books and novels and stuff like that. So it's there, it's still there. But Star Wars 1313 looked like it was going to be a really neat game. Um, and I think it was supposed to be a Boba Fett game. I don't know, but just a game where it wasn't so much about being a Jedi and Force using and stuff like that. So I had to take Yoda's thoughts to heart when he said, "You must unlearn what you have learned." Yeah. Um, so I had to be willing to let go of all that had gone before, because there was no way they were going to make movies in the expanded universe that fit all of that. I mean, Chewie was dead. There were extra galactic aliens that couldn't be felt through the Force that were coming. Hans and Leia's three children. They all became Jedi. One of them died in a blaze of glory. The other became a Sith Lord, and the other killed that Sith Lord. Just crazy stuff like that. That wasn't going to fit and make sense to people unless they had read 20-ish years of books and comics and played the video games, all of that. So overall, it made sense to do what they did because then they could have creative control. And I'm happy that the Lucasfilm Story Group, headed by Pablo Hidalgo, I think he heads it. Pablo and all of them, and Dave Filoni and everybody, I think they do a really good job of working. They all communicate with each other. All the Star Wars projects communicate with each other, and they fit and they work. Battlefront 2 told the story of the Battle of Jakku. Cool. It's all that, everything fits together. And then that epilogue where you play as Kylo Ren and all of that happens in there. I think it's I think it's good. They're paying really close attention, and we don't have weird novels like The Crystal Star. If any of you read that, I read that once when I was in high school. I read a lot of Expanded Universe stuff when I was in high school, junior high. The Jedi Academy trilogy, I, Jedi, that had Corran Horn in it. I didn't get into the X-Wing or Rogue Squadron novels much, but I didn't do like the Young Jedi Knight or the Junior Jedi Knight. I didn't do the young adult stuff, but I did read quite a few Star Wars novels. So I was sad at first when that all was relegated to non-canon, but I got over it, and I'm happy with how the Story Group is keeping good continuity between all the different Star Wars media. I'm really big on continuity, and so I appreciate that. So that's one thing. Okay, almost 7 minutes. Not bad. Okay. Second point, how I feel about The Force Awakens. Okay. I saw The Force Awakens 4 times in theaters. I would have seen it more, but I have obligations and responsibilities and things of that nature. So, it's okay. But I loved The Force Awakens. I felt, as I was sitting through the credits, not expecting anything. I mean, at first I was a little afraid. It's like, are they going to make it the same as the other? Is it going to feel like a Star Wars movie? Is it going to follow the same idea? And they did. There was a lot in there that they did to really. As soon as I saw Kylo Ren's Star Destroyer coming down from off screen, whichever direction it was, I don't remember which direction it was. When I saw the Star Destroyer come on screen after the credits, then I thought, okay, this is going to be like classic Star Wars. They're paying attention. They're going to, I felt that they were going to do a good job, and I thought that they did. I felt that it was everything that the first movie of a trilogy should be. Some people said it's just like A New Hope. They felt that it was too much copycat. And I think it's important to remember that history does repeat itself. The people, they all look the same, but only the names have been changed. Yes, that is a Barry Manilow reference. Lots of things keep happening. We always think that as young people, we are the first people to ever explore something. We're the first people who ever discovered something, whatever it was that we discovered. And we feel that... that's what we feel. We feel like we're the first people to ever have discovered anything, and so it feels new, and it feels like all the old people who were never, they had no idea what this was, this new thing that only we young people understand, Everybody feels that. Every generation has felt that, and probably more so within the last, 120 years or so, with the way that technology has advanced and quality of life has increased, and just the way that normal everyday life has just accelerated since the 1900s, So that makes it it heightens the sense all the more so that the new generation feels that everything is new. But the truth is that whatever is new is just wearing different clothes. It's just a new repackaging of an old thing. It's like fashion, repackage an old thing and market and brand it and say that you can't live without it, and people will flock to it and buy. And so, just in that idea that yes, there are similarities between Force Awakens and New Hope, and the Phantom Menace. In the first act of a trilogy, there's a kid in the desert. The kid is caught up in adventures greater than himself, greater than they could have ever imagined. Maybe they longed for adventure. They longed to be something better, and they finally got their chance. They meet an old mentor. The mentor dies, and there's a starfighter battle at the end of the film, and you blow up the big space station. Yeah, there's a lot of similarities because each of those things happen in Phantom Menace, and in New Hope, and in Force Awakens. History repeats itself. It's okay. Did you guys ever watch Power Rangers? How many seasons are now when they all do kind of the same thing, but it's just rebranded and it's new Zords and new costumes, but occasionally the Japanese do really weird stuff with their Super Sentai, like you just weird ones that they said Americans aren't going to go for this, and so that's why they make a second season of like Super Mega Force, Super what never mind. The idea is that it's okay for things to be similar. It's okay, I think. Because things happen over again. Every new generation has to discover old truths on their own. And then they realize that, hey, mom and dad, grandma and grandpa, they kind of learned these things too. I'm not talking about things, the frivolous surface things like how to use technology, how to play video games, how to use a phone, crazy things like that. Those are all surface things. I'm talking about life lessons, how to deal with people, meeting the one that you love, dealing with bullies, all these different things that we deal with in life. All of those things are relational things that happen over and over as people grow up in the same fashion that everybody else did. Their brain matures, their hormones rage, all of that sort of stuff happens to every human. Okay? All right, so Force Awakens, I loved it. I thought it was great. I think a lot of people did, except for the people who were critical of it and saying it's too much the same thing, but have perspective, people, okay? Have perspective. Okay. Third, Rogue One. This is my third point. I also loved Rogue One. I thought it was different in tone. I mean, that was the whole point. It was different in tone. It was a different kind of film. But I thought that it was so in tune with A New Hope. I thought that they really did a good job of tying in to the Star Wars universe. There were lots of references that was in there. I mean, it's days before A New Hope happens, okay, as the story gets going, and leading up to that same hour, or the hour before, whatever it is, And so I thought that they did a really, really good job of tying in things, of making things make sense, of giving greater depth and meaning to the old films, supplementing them. And I think that's really, really good. And in its own, it works as a really good, important moment because it's a big build-up into what happens next. I can understand how Solo isn't quite like that because it's much more individual. It's about one person. It's about one person and their journey and what makes them who they are. But Solo is going to be much farther in the video, so I don't want to say too much about that. But in terms of these anthology stories, yeah, they serve the purpose of supporting the films. And I think Rogue One does a really good job of that. Now, with the CGI Tarkin and Leia, yes, I knew that it was CGI. I knew it was going to be CGI going in. So, in that sense, there's a suspension of disbelief. There's the idea of, okay, this isn't real. It's not Peter Cushing. It's not a time-traveled Carrie Fisher just arrived out of the DeLorean just to do the scene. Be real. Okay? Think about this. Be real. We knew that it was going to be CGI. Well, we didn't know that Leia was going to be in there, so that was a surprise. But, we knew as soon as we saw her that, hey, this is a CGI representation, okay? They worked really hard to make that work, okay? Maybe we might think that we can do a better job, but I don't know. But just really think about this. Think about how the technology has progressed just in the last few years. Technology is amazing. Since I knew it was going to be CGI, it didn't bother me. I can tell that it was fake. You know, like the way that the mouth moves in CGI, just you can tell that it's too smooth. It's not rough enough. It's not whatever. It hasn't been perfected yet, okay? But you know, you deal with it. The idea is that the tech is there to support the story, okay? Um, Now, if you want to talk about special effects that feel like, you know, well, they could have done that better. Think about, did you ever see Goldfinger? The old James Bond movie Goldfinger, 1960s. Think about at the end when James Bond is versus Goldfinger. They're in the airplane, and there was this whole conversation before about how James Bond told Pussy Galore to not fire the gun in the airplane. You know, that's a Smith and Wesson. If you were to fire that, the bullet would pass through me and the fuselage. The cabin would depressurize, and we'd all be sucked out into space. You know, and so you know there was that whole little buildup, and then that pays off because then the gun goes off that Goldfinger's holding, shoots a window out, and so the cabin depressurizes it. Goldfinger can't grab onto anything, and so he's sucked through the cabin. But it looks like, you know, in Monty Python, those in between scenes where it's like those little paper figures and stuff like that, and they're just doing whatever little things. You know, it kind of looks like that effect where Goldfinger is kind of superimposed into it, and he's just kind of floating around the cabin, loosely disconnected from the background of the scene. You can so tell that it's fake. Now you can. But it told the story. It told the story, and it was the comedic payoff, well, I guess comedic payoff, of Goldfinger getting stuck in the window and sucked out into space, just like James Bond said. And hey, there you go. You know, technology is there to support the story. And the point of it is to do the story, you know? If you're getting all hung up on the details, then I think, you know, I mean, yes, they're not amateurs; they're professionals, and we want them to do a good job. I think that the technology of motion capture and digital representation like that, I just think that it's really gone really far. It's not perfect yet, but technology is almost never quite perfect yet, you know. So you just go with it, you know. That's my thought. That's my thought. Maybe I sound like I'm being a little opinionated on this, but these are my opinions. Okay? I'm allowed to have opinions. You're allowed to have your opinions. This is what I think. Okay? Now, here's the big one. All right. Point 4. The Last Jedi. Okay? Now, I am positive on The Last Jedi. I have to say that. I like it. I'm going to tell you that right now, just so that way you know what I'm thinking, and then I'm going to try to take you through my thought process of all of this here. When the trailer came out, I was afraid that Luke had like become a gray Jedi because of the thoughts of, you know, where he says, "What do you see?" and Rey says, "Light, darkness." Now, the trailers, of course, are made to kind of give an idea, but also be misleading and not really tell you a lot, but it whets your appetite, you know. I made a previous YouTube video of my reaction to the story trailer and what I thought of that, which doesn't have very many views because, you know, people probably don't care. But when I saw that first trailer that said, you know, that Luke says it's so much bigger. It's so much bigger than light and dark, and then he said the big cliffhanger to the trailer that says, "It's time for the Jedi to end." You know, we heard that and we thought, what is going on? I was afraid that there's going to be this big sort of moral relativity of, you know, there's no light, there's no dark, there's just the Force. That's what the gray Jedi say. And that it's, yeah, I was afraid of that whole mess of, you know, it's not about good or evil, it's not about light or dark or anything like that, and that it, you know, it would rationalize the dark side and all that. I was afraid something crazy like that was going. Happily, it did not. But I just had to go along with what the trailer said of what Luke said in the other one, where he says, This is not going to go the way you think. You like I like doing impersonations. I really hope that, oh, I can't think of what his name is, someone Ortega. He's doing a fan edit of The Last Jedi, and I sent in my videos to audition for Luke and Akbar. I haven't heard back, which either means I'm not going to or he hasn't picked yet. But anyway. So I just had to go to the theater with that in mind to say, I have no idea what to expect. I have no idea what to expect, and I'm not going to really spend too much time and effort thinking about what's going to happen, because chances are I'm going to be so wrong anyway. They kind of have to be really creative with it, because everybody gets obsessed about Star Wars when it comes out to think what's going to happen. And there's so many fan theories and speculations and everything like that it becomes... It's almost like trying to figure out when Jesus is going to come back at the rapture. The scripture says no one knows the time. No one knows the day. No one can predict it. Not even the Son himself knows the time. And anyone who tries to predict it is automatically wrong, because it's not going to happen when we expect it. But in that same idea, I'm thinking, I'm going to keep an open mind to just let it happen and see what happens. Okay? So, it was a big film. There was a lot of things that happened in it. I smiled at parts. I was sad at other parts. I was sad when the lightsaber broke. I was really sad at it, because I thought, this lightsaber has traveled so long from the Clone Wars, from Anakin, and it, came to Obi-Wan's possession. He held on to it for Luke, and then Luke had it and tragically lost it. But then Maz found it somehow. We still, I don't know if it was explained in comics or anything else how she found it. Go look at Stupendous Wave or Star Wars Theory. They probably figured that out. But I was sad when the lightsaber broke, because it had gone through so long, and it had this history, this Skywalker legacy, and it was being torn apart, and it finally did, and I was sad when that happened. And I was sad when Luke passed away into the Force. I didn't expect it. I really didn't expect it, and I was shocked. And when the credits were rolling and I was sitting through there trying to process it all, I did have mixed feelings. I really did. There was so much to process. It just felt like such a big movie. I almost felt like it was too big a movie just in that one time, because my brain was just going nuts. Really, but the same way in 1977, everybody's brains just blew up when Star Wars happened. It was the biggest thing that ever happened. It stayed in theaters for a year, kind of like Titanic did. Didn't Titanic stay in theaters for a year in 1997 or something like that? But yeah, 1977 completely blew everyone's minds. They had never seen anything like it before, and it was so real, and it was so relatable to them, and they couldn't get enough of it. They went to it and saw it so many times, But, because there's a lot to process. And to us, A New Hope seems very, very tame compared to this. So, every generation thinks that they have the new thing, and that that's never been discovered before. But, it's not always true, Everything's the same. It's just different packaging. So there was a lot to process, and I did have mixed feelings about it. It wasn't about whether I thought it was a good or a bad film. It's not whether I thought that it was a good story or a bad story. It's just I had the mixed feelings about what was happening in the story. I tend to be someone who just accepts things. I mean, not in sort of a que sera, sera sort of way, but just more in, okay, this is what's happening, and what do we do about it? That's kind of how I come about it. Each time I saw The Last Jedi, I felt better. It felt better. It felt like it made more sense to me. And I feel like there's... Hang on, I've got two thoughts here. I'm keeping an eye on my outline here. I've got two thoughts here, and I'm just trying to... I feel like I'm going to go on a real deep rabbit hunt on one way and then have to backtrack and do another. Um, okay. All right, so about Luke. The biggest complaint with The Last Jedi is how the character of Luke was treated. And we feel like that because we're so passionate about it. Um, and I feel that The Last Jedi, I feel that it's a very real story because, at least as far as Luke goes, it forces us to accept that we make mistakes. It challenges us. Because Rian Johnson, when he wrote it, he said, what is the most difficult thing for these people to accept about Rey's parentage, about meeting Luke, about about Kylo Ren? What is the most difficult thing that these people can face? Because I mean that's a storytelling thing. What challenges them? What challenges them and forces them to grow? You know. And if you're already tuning out on me, okay, um, but stick with me. Um, I think that The Last Jedi it's a very real story because it makes sense because it's not because it's not what we expect. It's not just because, hey, let's just make something of shock value and see if they go with it. It's not that, but because, like I said, it forces us to accept certain things that happen, that we make mistakes. That Luke made a mistake with Ben Solo when he had that urge to strike him down, when the dark side tempted him. And then he got caught in that temptation, and then the fallout that happened from that. But people say, and Mark Hamill had ideas that, Luke, if he had fallen back, it's because he would have been trying to figure something out. Maybe he was learning something. Maybe he was doing something. He felt that there would have been a more, go get him attitude about Luke because Luke always seemed to be the optimist. Um, but people change and circumstances change, and for specific reasons, not just the, oh, well, he's just different because just for kicks and giggles. It's not that. It's because there's a real reason behind it, and um, it's what had happened in the story between Luke and Ben. And so we think this isn't Luke, and Mark Hamill had said, this is not my Luke Skywalker. I'll make this film, but he's not my Luke Skywalker. He's Rian Johnson's Luke Skywalker. I'm going to talk about that sort of idea here also. Um, there's a lot of people who are upset of what Luke had become. And maybe they were upset because of how he handled Ben Solo. And they say, this is a bad story. It's a bad movie because we don't like it. But think about this. Think about that. We don't like what Luke had become. What if what if Star Wars, I'm not talking, I'm just saying, this is hypothetical, okay? Not about the technology or anything, but just story-wise. What if Star Wars had been told from The Phantom Menace forward, and without knowing about Darth Vader, without knowing about Luke, Leia, or Han, or the Emperor, or anything like that? But we had started fresh with Phantom Menace, meeting a young Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi, seeing all that happen, going through the Clone Wars, and just all that stuff happening. And then how would we have felt if, or as we watched Anakin choose to fall from the light, and he chose to embrace the dark? How would we have felt? And then being left on a cliffhanger of saying, the boy that we knew, gone he is. The boy you trained, gone he is. consumed by Darth Vader. And then we had, and Anakin was cut down and burned alive and put in this suit. The bad guys win. It wouldn't have been such a nice ending, you know? It would have been something like an ending akin to like a horror film where the bad guy wins or where everyone dies, you know? So think about that. Revenge of the Sith, if it had been the third movie of Star Wars ever made, maybe it wouldn't have been so popular because everyone dies or goes into hiding and the bad guys win. With a glimmer of hope that, you know, the kids, Luke and Leia, will grow up and that they'll save everything, but in the meantime, you're left with the dark times. You're left with something like Nazi Germany reigning over the galaxy with the tyrannical iron fist of intolerance and of oppression, you know? How would we have felt that way if we watched Anakin make that mistake and become something that we didn't want him to become? Now, consider Luke, who had a bright and promising beginning, and it seemed like everything was going to be okay until there was a decision that was made, and a mistake was made, and there was a fallout from that decision, and Luke became someone that we did not want him to become. And here's the moral that I want to put in at this point. Think about this. Really think about it. Good people can do bad things. It's not an excuse. It's a fact. It's a reason. The Last Jedi forces us to accept that people make mistakes and we have to learn how to deal with them. And good people can make bad choices. Anakin did. He was a good person who made bad choices, which led him down the dark side in desperation and in selfishness. Luke was tempted in that moment, and ultimately he refused, but at that point it was too late, and he didn't have a chance to correct the mistake. And you also have to say, okay, I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. I'm going to hold on to that thought. I'm going to bring it out later. Okay. So that's why I think it's a real story that makes sense. People didn't like how Luke turned out, but they didn't like what he did with Ben Solo, but it makes sense. Now, the whole going and hiding away thing, I'll talk about that in a little bit later. Okay? So, if you're sticking with me, congratulations. I hope that you're sticking with me and keeping an open mind and following my sermon, if you will. Now, backing off from Luke for a second, just considering The Last Jedi as a whole. I said how The Force Awakens had parallels. The Last Jedi has parallels too. The Last Jedi has parallels to Empire Strikes Back. Right? The Jedi newbie with newly discovered powers goes off to find Old Master, but is surprised at what they see when they find Old Master. Okay? Luke thought that he was going to find this Yoda, not having any clue who Yoda was, thinking in his mind that Yoda was this great warrior of the Old Republic, of the Old Jedi Order, not really having any idea. We don't really know what all... maybe we do, I don't really know what all Luke had discovered about the Jedi in his time. But it was 3 years between New Hope and Empire Strikes Back, so he was obviously learning something because he was able to call his lightsaber. Maybe it was something that he'd been working on. Maybe it was just sort of a Force instinctual thing where the Force kind of controlled his actions, if you will, and it obeyed his command. But, Luke probably had all these grand ideas, or Luke did have all these grand ideas about Yoda was going to be. I'm looking for a great warrior, is what Luke says. Wars not make one great. Consider that line. Wars do not make someone great. What he means is that Yoda says, I was the warrior. I fought the wars. It's it didn't turn out well. Um, not because okay, yeah, there's other things going on here. Um, and it's not where I'm saying, anti-war pacifism or anything. That's not what I'm saying. But the point of being a Jedi isn't about being a great warrior. Okay. Now this leads to a kind of a big point that I want to talk about here. um, Yoda blew away Luke's expectations of him. He was this little frog-like creature that messed with his droid, disrupted his campsite, and was just this little gremlin of a minion, who just was causing trouble. But then when the reveal comes, it's like, oh, dude, oh snap. And I think everybody in the theater was probably that way too. They thought, oh man, this Yoda guy, one, I can't understand him. Two, he's really annoying. He's a really annoying creature, you know. And, people back then probably were completely thrown off by the idea that this wise master who trained Obi-Wan Kenobi was this old little green frog, you know. But I mean, that's a classic storytelling. The insignificant creature by the side of the road that ends up being the key to unlocking your ability, or to being the one who gives you what is necessary to fulfill your journey. It's classic storytelling. That's what George Lucas was doing. And people responded to that intuitively. But I'm sure that Yoda caught a lot of people by surprise. Now, Rey was caught off by surprise when he met Luke, hiding off away, and I'll discuss why in a little bit. But Luke was not what Rey expected. You get that from the first get-go when Luke tosses the lightsaber behind him, saying, "I want nothing to do with this." Lightsabers. There was a really good article that somebody wrote, going into Luke's mind, and I think it was really, really well. I wish I could. Maybe I'll try to find it and post it, but it was a really, really well thought out article for the Last Jedi and Luke in that film, the way he was written. But lightsabers are what caused Luke's problems. With Luke's lightsaber, he cut down his father in anger and nearly went to the dark side. He had to toss his saber away and say, "Never. I'll never turn to the dark side." He also, by his lightsaber, nearly cut down his own nephew. He ultimately said no, but by that point it was too late. And with the Clone Wars, the Jedi had become warriors. They'd become generals, which was not in their nature. It's not really what the mission of a Jedi was to be. I mean, keeping peace and justice, yes, they had sworn themselves in service to the Galactic Senate, which means that if the Galactic Senate was going to war, then the Jedi felt compelled by honor to support the Senate, because the Senate represented the citizens. So by supporting the Senate, you supported the citizens of the Republic, defending the citizens of the Republic against the evil Count Dooku and Darth Sidious, the Sith. The Jedi knew that it was the Sith that was causing these problems, the Sith that had caused the war. That's why they stayed in it, not because they were trying to be warriors and generals and gain power, although some of them did, like General Krell, the one guy with the 4 arms and the 2 double-bladed lightsabers, the Jedi had to stay in it because they knew that there was a bigger thing going on, but it was still beyond their power to change it. But, Luke kind of gets this jaded idea of the Jedi to say that they let this happen. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit farther also, just kind of expound on that. So Luke doesn't want anything to do with the lightsaber. That's why he doesn't wear his lightsaber in The Last Jedi. Because it's a reminder of all the bad things that have happened, and he wants nothing to do with it. It makes sense. Okay? But Rey was completely thrown off. It was completely against her expectations and ours. He throws it, and we all go, "What did he just do? He just threw it away. That's his father's lightsaber. It's the lightsaber. He just threw it away." We were shocked. We were all shocked. It's one of those things that you have to process and you have to get into Luke's mind. That's what we were always wondering, is what's going on in Luke's mind in the last leading up to the Last Jedi. And then when we got there, we were kind of sad to find out, we were. But again, I think that it makes sense and it's real because it's not just this made up thing. Okay, now here's where my point comes in that I wanted to make. Expectations. Okay? I think our expectations of who the Jedi should be and what they can do and who we thought that Luke was supposed to be. I mean, we had expectations of Luke because he was the optimist, and we thought that, he has a good reason for, being gone. Maybe he's trying to find something. He was looking for the first Jedi temple. Maybe there was something there, a reason. There was something there that was going to help him come back and join the fight. But no, we find out that he wants to go there and let the Jedi be extinct because in his mind, okay, I'm going to get to that later. All right, so expectations of Jedi, okay? We have expectations of who the Jedi should be, and I think a lot of that, to just sort of come out of the movie for a second, is influenced by the Star Wars video games. Our expectations of Jedi are really formulated by the Jedi that we take control of in video games. And one of the things that Star Wars lets us do is it lets us engage in the universe and kind of make it our own. Like role-playing games, massive Knights of the Old Republic, or Star Wars Galaxies, all those different games, or the Star Wars role-playing game, however that went. We got to engage in this world. We got to take our first step into a larger world and sort of make it our own, And so I grew up with games like Masters of Terras Kasi, Episode 1 Jedi Power Battles, which I loved, by the way. Platforming was, yes, a little tricky, but you just learn to deal with it. You don't complain about it, you learn to deal with it. Then later on, Force Unleashed, Jedi Academy, Jedi Outcast, all these games where you're taking control of these Force wielders and their lightsabers, and you're building Force powers that were greater than what we're seeing in the film. Force flipping, Force jumping all over the place to get up these massive skyscrapers, using Force speed to get through tight places, using Force to push your enemies off the cliff, throwing your lightsaber like a homing beacon to slice up probe droids, spamming people with Force lightning, enemies with Force lightning, using the "there is no spoon" code, binding that to a key so that way every time that you do the Force lightning, you do "there is no spoon," and you get the Matrix camera going all around you, and it makes it just go like that, and it looks awesome, We took control of these characters, and we used Force powers to an extent that was beyond the films. So the warrior aspect of the Jedi became so glorified in our minds because we were doing this ourselves. We were given the chance to do that, and we took full advantage of it. And then, there's not a lot. I mean, if we had a game where it was, you're going to be a Jedi in a time of peace, and you're not going to use your lightsaber hardly at all, more of a puzzle game. I mean, yeah, there's some things that I think, work that way, or there's that element to it. But if you had a game that's all it did, and the Jedi never used his lightsaber, it probably wouldn't sell very well, because people like cutting they like cutting stormtroopers' heads off, dismembering them. They get a kick out of that, Turn up the dismemberment to maximum so that way every touch of the lightsaber basically just chops them up like it's a Mortal Kombat fatality, And that really became our idea of what the Jedi are about. And then we get Episode 1 that really pushed that, where they was like, whoa, these guys are incredible fighters, Uh, and then we get that in Attack of the Clones, where again, there's all of this fighting that's going on. And then we have the Clone Wars. And the Jedi are being viewed as these great warriors. And they're being taken down this side path that really is only a tangent to what they are. That's only a part of who they are. The Jedi are peacekeepers, they're not warriors. Mace Windu says, we're keepers of the peace, not soldiers. He was saying that, we're not an army. We're not, we're, we're not supermen, is what Mace Windu was saying, is that the Jedi weren't supermen. They were trained to be diplomats and to use force when necessary, but only when necessary, not as the first course of action. But that's what the Sith did, is the Sith drove that. They forced the Jedi to stop listening to the force as much. They forced the Jedi to stop being so meditative, and to cause crisis on them that they had to resolve, that they had to address. They couldn't stop and smell the roses as much as they used to. They actually had to be people of action, and that's not fully what the Jedi are. And I think that expectation of Luke Skywalker is the son of the chosen one, the son of Anakin Skywalker, and he's supposedly going to be the greatest Jedi that we've ever seen. We were expecting a big showdown. We thought that maybe there'd be a big show, like between him and Snoke, or him and Kylo Ren, just this big, massive display of Force energy. Or even in concept art for when we first met Luke, there was this idea of that we met Luke and there was these massive boulders that were just floating around him, just to give this sense of awe. But I mean, they decided against that for story reasons. We had these expectations of that Luke was going to be this great warrior, the way that Luke thought that Yoda was going to be. And then our expectations were dashed for different reasons, for certain reasons. But remember that the Jedi aren't warriors. To be a successful Jedi isn't to say, I have mastery of 1,000 different ways to kill you with the Force. That's what the Sith would say. That's the way of the Sith, the way of the dark side, is taking control, using power to oppress, inspiring fear. That's not the role of a Jedi. And so I think that we have to keep that understanding of what it means to be a Jedi. And we have to let our expectations go. Remember what Yoda said. You must unlearn what you have learned. We have to not take the Force and shape it into what works for us, but allow ourselves to be shaped into that which works with the Force. That's a quote from I, Jedi. Corran Horn. He was trying to figure out how to use the Force. Telekinesis was not in his bloodline. He couldn't figure it out, but he had great Force mental capacities. But that was a lesson that he had to learn in order to really access the Force, is not to make the Force do it, but to let himself join the flow of the Force, Okay, so I've gone on that to say that expectations of what Jedi are, I think, really tainted what our expectations of Luke Skywalker are. And I think that's why a lot of people were so upset. Because we weren't thinking about what Jedi really are. We're thinking about what we wanted the Jedi to be. And that's the dark side. The dark side says, take control. Make things the way you want them to be. That's what Anakin says. Together, you and I can rule the galaxy and make things the way we want them to be. That's what the dark side does. It's selfishness. So I think that we have to allow ourselves to be selfless and understand the mission of a Jedi before we start criticizing the way that Luke Skywalker was presented. Now, let me move on. I'm still in point 4. I told you this is the biggest one. Luke felt that he was doing the right thing. People say that Luke was written to be a coward. No. Because You have to understand the why. If you look at it at face value and don't really understand the reason why, you know what it's like? It's like having a Facebook argument with someone. It's the most fruitless and pointless exercise in futility there ever is, getting into a Facebook argument with someone, because they're not there to listen. You can construct, like me, I spend a long time constructing my answer to try to get to every possible angle and to make it seem like such, and to make it feel like a well-balanced, well-rounded, very well thought out response. I get a one-liner response that completely misses the point of what I said and completely misconstrues me because it's thoughts that they don't want to hear. And so they construe me as being intolerant and bigoted and, whatever other labels that they want to throw at me. And at that point, I've realized what a fool I was to try to think that you can reason with someone. My father pointed out a piece of wisdom to me. He said that he's heard many times before. He said, "A man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still." Which means that if you try to force someone into understanding your point of view, your certain point of view, then chances are they're not really going to understand it. And in the end, it was just, I have other thoughts about the follies of the internet and what it does to our narcissistic minds. But anyway, let's not do Facebook arguing here, okay? Just follow with me. Stay with me and listen to this, okay? Again, my opinion, but my what I think and what makes sense. Luke felt that he was doing the right thing because he did have this jaded view of the Jedi. Because he thought that every time that the Jedi are doing something, they're always causing trouble. There's always an enemy that's cutting them down. The Sith, they take them over and they rule the galaxy, and there's problems. Or if a Jedi makes a mistake, then we've had that in the world. This is part of what comes into it too. We've had this issue in the world where somebody says something that's wrong or grievous, not Star Wars Grievous, but it's something that's wrong, it's offensive, it's whatever, and we get all hopped up on them, and they say they're supposed to know better, especially if there's someone who's either a conservative or someone who's a Christian, somebody who's supposed to have the moral high ground, or somebody who says that they're trying to follow another authority, This is why I said that The Last Jedi is a real story, because people make mistakes, and it forces us to accept that even our heroes make mistakes. We don't want them to. They don't want to. But it happens because we are not perfect. Even our heroes aren't perfect. So Luke thought that being a Jedi ended up causing trouble, that there was a problem with the Jedi philosophy. And that's why Luke chose not to train the Jedi specifically in the ways of the old Jedi Order when he started. And again, Stupendous Wave, he'll go into that and say why Snoke respected Luke Skywalker and how he was training the new Jedi, to say he's not training them as the Jedi of old because he's gone and he's looked and he's researched. He's been scouring the galaxy for years trying to find out what he can and learn and try to figure out why did the Jedi Order fail. But I think one of the things that he misses is that the dark side is deceptive and subversive, and it tries to find any opportunity it can to get an advantage. It works, it sees in the heart, it twists minds, and it's the dark side that causes problems, not the light side. I wish that Yoda had said something like, darkness light cannot create. Only that which obstructs the light. As if to say, it's not that the Jedi were the problem, but it's that there were, sure, maybe there were problems with the Jedi that the Clone Wars exacerbated, but those problems came to light because of the working of the evil, the working of the Sith, the darkness that shrouded over The darkness that disrupted the light and caused the light to be obscured to the point where Mace Windu says, I think it is time we inform the Council that our ability to use the Force is diminished. I can't do a Samuel L. Jackson impression. You know, and clouding this boy's future is... They couldn't see because the dark side is working, you know. Good people can try to do the right things, but bad people can kind of make it kind of hard. There's all kinds of applications that goes to, but I'll just let you run with that on your own. Now, and to say that Luke, okay, another complaint about Luke is that he didn't want to train Rey. He wasn't so open to training her, and that he was reluctant to. Yoda didn't even want to train Luke, remember? Go back to 1980. Go back to the old films. Go back to Empire Strikes Back. Yoda was reluctant at first to train Luke, even though that was the whole reason why he was at Dagobah. The whole point of being on Dagobah was to be hidden from the Emperor, be hidden from Darth Vader, be masked by the strong Force presence of the planet and that dark side cave, you know, so masking himself so he can't be found. And when Luke shows up, Yoda sees him, sees what he's all about, how he's just this sort of whiny kid, you know. Luke still has that whininess to him, even after being at war for 3 years in the Galactic Civil War. But he sees this Luke character, and he's not sure about this. I cannot teach him. The boy has no patience. He will learn patience. Much anger in him. Like his father. Was I any different when you taught me? That's an interesting thing. I wonder, I don't know how that's probably in the books, is what that means. But Luke didn't want, or Yoda didn't want to do it. He didn't want to do it, but he was hesitant, remember? So why are we getting so upset at Luke not wanting to train Rey at first, when Yoda didn't want to do the same thing? Perspective, people. Perspective. And again, I'm sorry if I'm being a little bit strident in my tone, but I'll explain why I'm getting a little worked up. Okay? Remember the surprises of 1980. And then think about the surprises that we have now. Nothing is different, people. Nothing is different. There is nothing new under the sun. Or under the twin suns, if you want. There's nothing new under the twin suns. Okay? It's all the same. It's just a little repackaged because history repeats itself. And the new generation has to learn the lessons that the old generation had already learned. Okay? We hope that lessons get learned a little better, a little sooner, a little more efficiently, but it's real. It's real life, people. We can't just have it be a complete fantasy that has no basis in reality. It has to mean something, and it has to be relatable, you know. Otherwise, it's just kind of out there and doesn't make sense. Okay. Now, also with The Last Jedi... I'm still on point 4. Jeez. I knew that this was going to be a long one. Rose Tico. A lot of people say that they hate her character. A lot of people hate Kelly Marie Tran too. Not cool. They say that they hate Rose because she's not well written, she's a pointless character, whatever is going on, you know. Let me say that I'm positive on Rose because Rose helps Finn to continue to grow as a free man. Not being a stormtrooper anymore, not being in servitude of the First Order. You know, Finn broke out, you know, out of conscience and out of fear, and he's trying to learn what it means to be a free man, to learn what it means to join himself to a bigger cause and not shrink away. Remember how he wanted to shrink away and run away and find Rey? You know, maybe to keep her safe, but to keep her safe, you can do what? Keep running away from the fight? Yeah, kind of a deserter, you know? Rose challenges him, forces him to reconsider, in a sense, but gives him the opportunity to do better. She gives him the opportunity to contribute to the fight in his own way. Now we could say, but it didn't pay off. They got caught. It didn't work. I don't have anything to say on that one right now. Okay, but still, even if their wild goose chase didn't turn out the way they wanted it to, and there were a lot of side things that went that we felt that maybe didn't, that you felt didn't mesh with the rest of the story, and that it just didn't belong. You have to understand that Finn is learning things. Finn is learning things, and Rose is the one to help him. And Rose has motivation because she was originally this background character, just this tech, this nerdy tech that never thought that she would meet a hero of the Resistance, but just be relegated to being in the background and watching the the others do all the fighting. Because she had a sister who was in the bomber who died. So to honor her sister, she takes up the mantle of leading a charge, of leading a role, of leading a vital mission to help save the Resistance. She comes out from the background and becomes a foreground character. Whether you think she should have or not, that's not for you to choose. That was her decision. Okay? Part of, I think... Okay, hang on. But yeah, okay, so that was that thought. She was a background character who chose to step forward to honor her fallen sister. And she helps Finn to develop and grow as he's becoming a free man, and he's learning lessons. Okay? He's learning lessons about the real world outside of the First Order, because that was the only world that he knew. Okay? So, give him a break. Now, I think that, and Rose also makes an important point about fighting in general, about war in general. I think The Last Jedi makes a lot of good points about things. Just, little side notes, little nuggets of gold. And I think one of them is, that's how we win. It's not fighting what we hate. It's saving what we love. That's a good line. You might think it's cheesy, you might think it's cliche. It's a good line. Okay, because that is good motivation for patriotism. It's a good motive for serving in your armed forces. It's not, like, there was a thing that, like a meme that I saw, like, for the Marines, where it says, we fight not because we fight not because of who's in front of us, meaning the enemy, but we fight because of who's behind us. Okay? That's the motivation. That's the motivation. I'm not going to go into War and Peace or anything like that. Or I'm not getting into, that's not what I'm getting into, but I'm saying that it's the motivation. Why is there a resistance? Why was there a rebellion? It's because they were trying to save what they loved. It's a motivation. Okay. Now, breaking again out of the film, getting into real world, the treatment of Kelly Marie Tran is unacceptable. So much hate and vitriol and slander was put on her to the point that what did she? I heard that she had to delete all of her Twitter activity, and basically she's just become invisible on Twitter, hiding away, completely understandable. I mean, I guess if you're a celebrity, you kind of have to deal with those, but really, people, there was so much hate that went onto her. She's not the only one. Ahmed Best, Jar Jar Binks. Everyone hates Jar Jar Binks, and they love to hate on Jar Jar Binks, and they love to hate on Jake Lloyd, young Anakin Skywalker. They even hated on Hayden Christensen, too. At least for Attack of the Clones, less for Revenge of the Sith. Why do we love to hate? I'm looking at you right now. Why do we love to hate? I'll tell you. It's because it makes us feel better about ourselves. If we can spend our energy tearing someone else down, it makes us try to look good. And it's about expectations. We expected, I don't know what we expected Anakin Skywalker to be, but we didn't expect him to be, Jake Lloyd. At least you guys didn't. Somebody didn't. I was 12 years old when The Phantom Menace came out. I loved it. I love all the movies. I do. Not because I just drink the Kool-Aid of whatever comes out, but because I think that they're good. I really do. I can understand, actor-isms, performance, but that's not the deal. To me, it's about the story. Everything else is forgivable. To me, we have to learn. We have to learn to forgive. But the treatment of Kelly Marie Tran and Ahmed Best and Jake Lloyd and Hayden Christensen and all these other people who have gotten so much hate and resentment about their contributions to Star Wars, it's unacceptable. It's like bullying. That's what people have become. All the more so since the internet has become so widespread, accessible, everyone becomes a bully. Because it's easy to bully someone from behind the safety of your keyboard, from behind the safety of your phone. It's easy to bully people. Because you think you have expectations of what things should be, and when it's not met, you become angry. You become angry because you feel threatened. We feel threatened when things don't go our way. But listen to what Yoda says. Train yourself to let go of everything you fear to lose. Okay? We have to be a little bit more forgiving, and we have to be a little bit less hateful. Okay? It's unacceptable what's happened to these people and the hate that's gone to them. It's not good. Not good. And I'm disappointed in the Star Wars fan base for it. And like I said, it comes to expectations. This is a big point. Like I already said, Star Wars lets us engage and make our own impact in the Star Wars world, in the Star Wars universe, and it lets us engage in it and enjoy it and tailor it to our own experience, We have things like fan fiction or fan films. Any of you seen Art of the Saber before? These two Korean brothers who used a Civil War letter as just kind of a little story backdrop, but then there was these two fighters. They fought in this forest. It's a great fight. That was years ago. Ryan versus Dorkman, or whoever else. They're friends of them that they've done since then. All these different fan films, fan edits. Addy-Wan Revisited, he did that. Great work. Take A New Hope and graphically spiff it up so the blasters look better, the lightsabers look better, the graphical fixes, things that give it consistency. Like when A New Hope, are they away? They've just made the jump into hyperspace. You're sure the homing beacon is secure aboard their ship? They just made the jump into hyperspace, and then when you get to the Falcon, they're not in hyperspace. They're sitting there in space. And so he put a shot of the Falcon, where it kind of comes up behind the camera and comes out this way, and you're in hyperspace. And then he put like the blue effect of hyperspace while Han and Leia are talking. Not a bad bit of rescuing, huh? Sometimes I amaze even myself, and they're having this conversation in hyperspace, Simple little fixes like that. Fan edits. It's great. Or like I said, Ivan Ortega, I hope I'm not messing up his name. He's doing a fix of The Last Jedi to make it into what he thinks it should be. And I contributed some voice, I auditioned. I didn't get the part. I haven't heard anything yet. I really want to, and I'm doing it not because I think that The Last Jedi was bad and needed fixing, but because I always wanted to be Luke Skywalker. And, making fan films, making fan edits, fine. Anakin red. I remember that when I was in college. Somebody made Anakin Saber red on Mustafar. They hand painted it frame by frame or however they did it. It looked great, Just because of technology being so available to consumers like us, even amateurs can make things that look semi-professional. And people who are more experienced can make things that do look professional. Okay? That's all cool because it's a form of expression, you know? It's great. But like I said, just as the Star Wars video games kind of tainted Jedi being a Jedi into being a warrior and gave us the idea that great Jedi with massive force potential should be able to kill you with a single thought, you know, Eddie Izzard, the Death Star canteen. I'm Darth Vader, so Darth Lord Vader, I can kill you with a single thought. Well, you still needed a tray. He's waiting in line to get his food at the Death Star canteen, and the guy completely doesn't care that he's Darth Vader. He says, you're going to wait in line, you're going to get a tray. And never mind. Okay. So the fan fiction, the films and stuff like that, the thing was when we go to see the actual stuff that's made there, because again, when in between Force Awakens and Last Jedi, we had all of our thoughts. All of our thoughts, all of our wondering, all of our contemplations, all of our speculations, and we really held on to those. Some people, their fan theory, you know, Darth Jar Jar, you know, I don't actually know how that theory goes. I just know that it's out there. We hold on really tightly to our ideas because we think, kind of in our narcissistic minds, that we know the best way to do things and that our way is better. If we're going to keep an open mind on things, then shouldn't we actually keep an open mind? Keeping an open mind doesn't mean that I have my thoughts as to what it should be, and if you disagree with me, then if you're not with me, then you're my enemy. Only a Sith deals in such absolutes. I think Obi-Wan should have said such absolutes, because absolutes are good. You know, 1 + 1 is an absolute. It's 2. Absolutes are good. They're not... Never mind. Okay. So, I think that when it comes to actually seeing the feature films or watching the TV shows, which I love, by the way, the TV shows are great. I still have to get through Rebels Season 3. I haven't watched it yet. Our fictions, our thoughts, our theories, our hopes, all of those things, I think we need to leave them at home when we go to the theater. Not to say that our thoughts don't count, but to say we need to go and see what's going to happen. And then we take it with us and see what's going, okay? I mean, why do we go to the movies anyway? Why do we go to the movies? We go there to enjoy and to be enriched and to be challenged. Sometimes movies challenge our perceptions of things. They make us think about things. Good movies make us think about things. It's not just eye candy, and it's not just predictable, sappy Hallmark Channel, we know exactly how it's going to end because they're all made exactly the same way. But we want to be enriched. We want to learn something. We want to feel good about what we learned, about what we saw. We want it to mean something. And we want to enjoy it, but we want to be challenged too. We don't just, we want to learn something different. We want to consider a different angle. Not to say that we're always wrong, but just to have something different, you know? But we don't go to the movies just to be indulged. At least we shouldn't. I mean, if we do, then I guess it depends on the movie that you're going to see. Anyone who's going to go see 50 Shades is probably going there to be indulged and not to be enriched or challenged. But here's the thing. This is not going to be a popular thought. I don't know, maybe it is, maybe it's not. The customer isn't always right. Maybe I don't know if that stings you at all. But I know just from different experiences that I've had that people who you're serving, people who you're working for, people who you're just in your experiences, when you're doing what it is that you're trying to do, and there's people who think that they know how you're supposed to do things better than you know, or people are asking for things that are foolish or nonsensical, or it's not even a good thing to ask for, the customer isn't always right. And so, because think about this. I am not an actor. I am not a filmmaker. I am not a writer. I do not have any of those credentials or that training or that experience. I might have my thoughts and opinions, but that's it. I don't have a degree in writing. I don't have a degree in filmmaking. I did not graduate from acting school. And so I really don't have the authority to criticize. And again, it doesn't mean I'm just gonna drink the Kool-Aid and take whatever's given to us just because it has a Star Wars label slapped on it, and that I'm not gonna have any thoughts or whatever. Sure, I'm gonna have thoughts on it. I've been giving you my thoughts for the past hour and 15 minutes. Kudos to you if you've kept up with this. But you know, I am not an actor, so I'm not going to criticize Jake Lloyd or Ahmed Best or Kelly Marie Tran because they're doing their work and they're doing the best that they thought. I'm not going to criticize Ryan Johnson because I am not a writer and I'm not a director. I don't have that responsibility. I don't know how to make great stories. Maybe you think he doesn't either, but bite your tongue. And I'm not a filmmaker. I'm not the president. I'm not the CEO of a company. You know, I almost wonder which is more popular, to hate Kathleen Kennedy or to hate Donald Trump. I'm not sure which is more popular right now. But, you know, if we're going to be open-minded about things, about what's happening, if we're going to allow the Star Wars universe to expand and grow beyond what it is, not to say just so it's going to be different for the sake of being different, but I mean actually growing, organically growing, it means that we have to consider other ideas and not get angry when reality or someone else proposes a different thought or confronts or challenges us. You know, we were challenged with our thoughts of Luke because we thought that he was going to be this great warrior Jedi, and he wasn't. He thought he was doing the right thing. And we have to understand that. We have to understand his motivations and why. Maybe we can still disagree with it, okay, but all the hatred, all the anger, it's not useful. Calling out each other and being so combative against each other. There's a difference between being passionate and being a belligerent bully. I think there are too many bullies. I think that the internet creates too many bullies. Sometimes I think we'd be better without. So that's all of that I think that I've got, because otherwise I'm just going to keep retreading what I've already said. I do have a fifth point on Solo. I liked it. I'm sad that it hasn't performed well for whatever the reasons being. But I think that some of the reasons are some of the ones that I've already said, because we thought the actor didn't do a great job, or because we thought that the story was dumb, or we thought that it just didn't meet our expectations. But I mean, I know that there were other logistical things. You know, 70% of the film had to be reshot. There was worry about it. There wasn't much promotion. It didn't make us feel like, you know, this is something that we really want to go see until like a month before, when they started releasing all the TV ads, the TV spots. You know, and I understand that things like that have plagued a film. But hey, A New Hope had its plagues too. You think getting Han Solo was made, and yeah, there was a deficit, sure, but because of all the expensive reshoots and stuff like that, they were trying to save it. They were trying to do what they could to try to keep making it worth it to present and to add to the Star Wars universe. Think about how much problems A New Hope had. Remember how I've said you got to keep perspective of what has happened before and what was there? We think that this trouble with Han Solo is this new thing. It's like, oh no, Star Wars is in trouble because we're having all these problems. A New Hope had so many problems. There were so many problems that George Lucas went to the hospital with chest pains. He thought he was dying of a heart attack. Okay, I don't know if he thought he was dying, but he thought he was having a heart attack. Heart attack. Heart attacks can be fatal. Okay. Um, and the first cut of Star Wars was a dismal cut. It was bad, from what I hear. And it wasn't until his wife or ex-wife, whoever it was, Marcia Lucas, cut it together and made it work really well that it's like, hey, this is awesome, you know? Um, but the British film crew didn't like what was going on. They thought this stupid American was making a child's film that was dumb Flash Gordon. The actors didn't even understand it themselves. They were trying to. You know, Harrison Ford is famous for saying, you can type this stuff, George, but you can't say it. You know? Luke begging and pleading for George Lucas to not to say, but we can't go back. Fear is their greatest defense. I doubt if the actual defense systems there are any different from those on Aquila or Sullust, and what is there is probably more directed towards a large-scale assault. You know, begging to not say that line, you know. The Sandcrawler got destroyed on the set because of massive desert rainstorm, and all the vehicles were getting stuck out in the desert, not able to move. Malfunctioning droids and props, special effects shots that didn't look good at first, you know. A New Hope had so many problems. It was such a challenge to make. But George Lucas stuck to his guns, and they made it work, okay? Having problems making a movie is nothing new. It's just now we're watching them like a hawk and being so critical of them. As if we have any authority as consumers to be a critic. We can have opinions, but I think that esteeming ourselves as high as telling people what they should do with their property, I think it's a form of bullying. I mean, if they were making a really poor product, that's one thing. But I don't think that Han Solo is a poor product. And I think people agree that Han Solo is actually a pretty neat film. It just doesn't fit expectations, and it was just plagued with problems. And The Last Jedi, I think, if I remember right, had a good Rotten Tomatoes score that the critics actually thought it was really cool, but the people hated it because it didn't fit their expectations. Okay? And so their opinions suddenly became law to people. And I think that people have kind of lost that ability to keep perspective on things of that nature. So I guess to summarize all of this, I know I'm running nearly an hour and a half. I knew it was going to be really long. Those are all the points that I wanted to make. But let me just leave you off with this. Do we, as Star Wars fans, really love Star Wars? Or just our own version of it? Think about that and ask yourself honestly, do you really love Star Wars, or do you only love what you can make it to be yourself? This is what Luke said in Legends book of Vision of the Future by Timothy Zahn. The essence of the dark side is selfishness, the elevation of yourself and your own desires above everyone else. Selflessness is the essence of being a Jedi. That's what Luke said. Prequel haters had years to cool off. They had one of those 2-3 years of production between. They had years to cool off before the next film came. But with the Marvel formula of films just coming out every few months that keep feeding onto it, that Star Wars is taking, you know, it's just that and excessive loud and obnoxious internet voices compound this mounting tension, and there's already division in our country already because everybody is at each other's throats so much. I think not because they're fighting what they love, but they're hating. They're fighting what they hate. And sometimes the things that we hate are the things that we don't agree with. And I think that some people don't know how to actually peacefully disagree. They think they do, but really all it means is that as long as you like what I like, we're good. But if you start making a point of doing something that I don't agree with, then I'm going to make your life hell. We've seen it before. I think our fragile psyches are too touchy on things. And I think just having these things of The Last Jedi and Solo so close to each other, it sort of compounds it a little bit. So I think that people need to keep a proper perspective. I think that if you keep a proper perspective, you will find out that things are okay. At least as far as the Star Wars franchise go. Things are okay. All right? I like the things that have happened. I like all the films that have come out. I think that they're good. I think they're worthwhile. I think that they contribute something. And I think that if we surrender our expectations and our sort of self-indulgent, egotistical narcissism about things to think that we always know what's better, I think that we can all agree that there's good stuff that's happening, good stories that inspire us, that we enjoy, that we can learn from, that we can be enriched, that we can be challenged by. Just remember what it means to be a Jedi. And remember what it means to be open-minded. And keep a proper perspective. So, I've gone on long enough. If you get all the way through this, kudos to you. I would really hope for a like or subscribe. I don't always do things like this. This is pretty different, and it's probably going to take me 2-3 days to upload it on my really slow internet. But anyway, that's what I've got going on here. So, have a good evening, and remember, the Force will be with you. Always.